here we go. Today, what I want to do, the goal for today is to triple your productivity. So what I mean by that specifically is think about any goal that you want to achieve or any action that you want to take that you know you may have some trouble actually following through on, right? It's a very common scenario. Well, imagine with just doing one simple little exercise, a simple little exercise that will take you less than 5 minutes, sometimes even less than 2 minutes. Imagine that doubling or even tripling your chances of actually following through. Sounds like a pretty good deal, right? Well, that's what I'm going to teach you today. And what I want to start out with is telling you my story, because before I even jump into that, I want to just tell you that this is not speculation, by the way. There's over 100 empirical, scientifically well-controlled studies that show that this technique works really well. That's why I think this is worth paying attention to and worth your time really trying to implement this. So anyway, on to my story. Most people know this, that I'm an author. A lot of you have read my first book. Well, after I wrote my first book, I've been working on a second book. Started about 3 years ago, and I was really productive. For about a year, I was researching the book, and I was formulating the proposal, which is the first step in getting a book published. And then what happened was amazing. I got a book deal. HarperCollins decided to buy the book. They offered me a generous advance, which I was very excited about. And then something happened. As soon as I was on contract, and as soon as I had this deadline, I no longer could write. Stephen Pressfield calls this the resistance, but it just became too real. And every day I went from writing, every single day to not being able to really put any words on the page. And then I discovered a book called Succeed by Dr. Heidi Halverson, which is a great book, by the way, and I recommend it. And she presented this amazing research on what allows us to take action. And so here's one of the studies that she mentioned, which still stays with me to this day because it's so powerful. It was called the College Essay Study. A professor by the name of Peter Gollwitzer, who's kind of the father of this research, wanted to do an experiment, and he recruited his own students. There were volunteers from his own class. And it was right before Christmas break. And he basically gave them an assignment saying, I want you to write an essay and mail it to me before 48 hours after Christmas break. Right? That's all I had to do. Just write an essay, mail it to him within 48 hours of actual Christmas Day. And he split up the groups into two halves. The first half was the control group. They received the instructions I just told you. The second group was the experimental group. They received the same instructions, except they were given this very small exercise that I've been alluding to. Okay, it was just 2 questions. Before they left for Christmas break, he had them answer 2 questions, write them down, the answers, and then submit them before they went for Christmas break. The control group, as a result, 32% of the students, I believe it was, actually ended up completing the essay. Not such a great rate. The other half of students that completed this small little exercise, it took them less than 5 minutes, 72% successfully completed and sent in this essay. Now that is stunning. We're talking about more than double the number of students actually followed through on this action. That means if you were to do this little exercise, if you were one of those students, you would have more than doubled your chances of actually following through on the action. What's amazing is that this exercise has been studied over a wide range of different behaviors. We're talking about dieting, exercising, and going to the gym, taking vitamins and medications that people need to take in order to survive. And so what are these 2 questions is probably what you're wondering. Here they are. They're so simple that you may overlook them, but here they are. When and where will you write the essay? That's it. When and where will you write the essay? That's what got those students. That's what almost tripled the chances of those students to actually follow through on the action. Now, this sounds too good to be true. At least it sounded too good to be true for me. So it's really critical you understand not just the questions, but the logic behind the questions and why they work. Okay? So here's why they work. One of the reasons, according to the literature, why we don't follow through on the actions to begin with, on our goals and our actions, is because it's what they call a failure to seize on an opportune moment to act. Now, what does that mean in plain terms? Well, You ever not do something, not follow through on something that you knew you were supposed to do, and then when people ask you why, you say, well, I didn't have a chance. I didn't have a chance to go to the gym. I didn't have a chance to write that email. I didn't have a chance to read that book. I didn't have a chance to write this morning. Well, it's actually not true. I mean, most of the time, it's not that you don't have a chance. The problem is actually you have too many chances. See, what happens when we have a goal or an action is every moment presents an opportunity that we can act on that goal, right? But the problem is in the moment is a very, very hard time for us to decide because we talk ourselves out of it, right? So when I was sitting down to write my book, those days where it was very hard for me, I would talk myself out of it. I would say, well, this isn't the right moment. I mean, I should eat breakfast first and then I'll be, nourished and energized to basically follow through. Or, you know what, now's not the right time to act because, there's that great rerun of Lost that I need to watch, which, by the way, is an amazing TV show. It's a writing killer. But you see what I'm saying? That our brain is very bad at deciding what the right moment is to act because we're just not objective in that moment because we usually don't want to follow through. So here's what Goldwitzer says. What we need is we need to plan in advance. If we can create just a hard and fast rule for ourselves, and we can basically turn ourselves into a machine. It's almost like instead of deciding in the moment what to act, it's like we program ourselves in advance, and then when the moment comes, our brain, like a machine, just automatically executes. That's what we're talking about today. That's why when and where works. Because when you ask when or where, you're basically creating a rule for yourself. So what am I talking about? Well, the technical term for this entire strategy is called implementation intentions, which is a terrible term. So we're not going to use it. We're going to call them if-then plans, which is what Heidi Halverson calls them. So here's how if-then plans are structured. If some trigger, then some action. Okay, can you see that? If some trigger, then some action. So what we need, basically this rule is telling us when we approach some trigger, when we notice some kind of situational cue, then we take our action. So in my case, what I did was I asked, okay, well, I know I need to write because I'm not writing. What do I need to do? Or when and where should I write? Well, I decided I'm going to write every morning at 7:30 a.m., and I'm going to sit down at my desk in my chair, and I'm going to start writing, right? So what I was doing is I was creating this rule. I wrote it out just like this. If it is 7:30 a.m., then I will sit down at my computer and start writing. It's that simple, right? So let's do one for the gym, okay? Let's say you work all day and you want to go to the gym. Well, if I get home from work, right, I pass through my front door, then I will put on my shoes and immediately go to the gym. What this does is it takes the guesswork out of it. Our brain, our system one, as Daniel Kahneman will call it, the intuitive brain that is really the motivating brain, is really bad at second guessing, but it's really good when we give it a very clear black and white rule. And so that's the whole point of this. When you ask when and where, you basically are able to form a trigger that allows you to take an action. So there's a way to turbocharge this, okay? If you just do this, you're going to double or triple your chances, possibly double or triple your chances of achieving some goal or action. But there's another reason why we often fail to follow through, and we can use if-then plans to deal with that too. The other reason we fail to follow through is because of distractions, right? Even if we create this plan, you might start writing, like I would start writing, and then the phone would ring, or I would, again, get an urge to watch TV instead. That's why what we can do is we can use this if-then formula to plan in advance and give us rules to navigate our obstacles and distractions. So what do I mean by that? So I am kind of very tempted by the internet when I write. So I created a rule for myself. I knew that the obstacle was that I would possibly, even if I sat down and started writing, I would get tempted and I would go on the internet. So I wrote down, if I find myself going on the internet, then I will shut off the internet. I will actually pull the cable modem out and put it in my other room. It worked like a charm because when the internet was becoming distracting, my mind had this automatic rule just to execute without delay. And again, this is the process that I use to get myself from not writing anything to 1,000 words pretty much every day consistently for like the last year and a half now. Okay, so let's just recap here. Okay, let's recap the steps. Okay, because I don't want you to miss this. Step 1 is to decide on the action. Okay, the more specific, the better. Okay, I could say I'm going to write today, or I'm going to write 1,000 words. 1,000 words is better when you're more specific. The second thing is to create an if-then plan. That's your primary if-then plan, right? Just like we talked about before. And then third is if-then plan for the obstacles. Okay, so pick out what are some of the major obstacles that are going to prevent you from actually following through on this action, even if you start to engage in it, and then write an if-then plan to basically navigate those obstacles. So there you have it, folks. This is a powerful tool. I want you to use it because if you use it, I really stand by this. I think what you're going to find is pretty immediate results. Now, this is the end of our 12-minute webinar. I hope you enjoyed it for those of you who have to go. I know some of you are going to want a little bit more interactivity, so we can go through a few examples. So if you need to drop off now, good luck with your work. Otherwise, I'm going to take some questions right now. But before I take questions, what I want to do is I want to make sure that you guys really know how to do this. So what I would love for you to do is right now in the little questions widget in your GoToWebinar, I want you to write some if-then statements, okay? I want you to do some if-then planning, just hypotheticals. You don't have to pick something that you actually want to do for yourself. It would be helpful if you did that, but just I want to see that you know how to do this. So come up with a couple if-then plans and put them in the little question box, and we'll go through them, and I will try to coach you on how to maybe make them a little bit more powerful, okay? So I'm going to go into my question box. Okay, I don't have any if-then plans yet, so let's, okay, I just have one that came in. Okay, Mike has a great one. If it is 6 a.m., I will be conducting my morning run through the neighborhood. Beautiful, right? A trigger can be simply just a time, right? If you have a specific time, then that makes for a good trigger. Here's another one from Robert. If I arrive at the office, then I will open up my calendar or task box, not my email. Great. That's a great one. So again, if I arrive at the office, then I will open up my calendar to my task box. So that's a great way, instead of getting distracted by email, you have a hard and fast rule that your brain knows how to execute. Okay, let's do one more. If it is 2:30 tomorrow, I will begin the outline of my presentation. This is fantastic, okay? Now, let me give you a little bit of coaching on how you might make these a little bit more powerful, okay? Because here's the thing. Triggers, often time-based triggers work really well for people, but what you might find is that often they don't work as well for people. You might want to experiment with different things. Oftentimes, one of the best triggers to use is a habit that is already in effect in your life, right? So here's an example of that. Brushing your teeth. Most people, I hope, brush their teeth every single morning, right? Now, what I want to do is I want to meditate every single morning. That's kind of my New Year's resolution. Well, I've been doing it for 2 years, so it's a little bit older than that. But when I first started meditating, I had a problem actually getting myself to meditate. So what I did was I used a habit that was already very successful, and I tacked this habit on top of that one. So I said, if I am done brushing my teeth, and the more specific you can be, the better. If I put down the toothpaste or put the toothpaste back in the cabinet after I'm finished brushing my teeth, then I will go straight to the couch and meditate. This is often a very effective way to do it, is just to simply tack it on to an existing habit, okay? And again, remember to be as specific as possible. So for the gentleman who wrote that they wanted to, their action was to take a run through the neighborhood, you may want to quantify it, right? You may want to say how much time will I run through the neighborhood? Is it a 5-minute run? Is it a 10-minute run? Is it a 20-minute run? Are you going to run, to the park and back? Are you going to run around the library? I mean, what are you going to do? The more specific you are, the more effective this is going to be. Let's see. Well, we have a lot. Good job for the class participation here. If I want to read the newspaper after work, I will first meditate for 10 minutes. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Again, distractions are a great reason to use these if-then plans, because if we create a rule that allows us to deal with the distraction, we're going to be much more productive. Okay, so now that we've gone through some if-thens, anybody have any questions? Any general questions about this? I mean, one of the last things I want to say before I take any questions is it's staggering to me that more people aren't using this technique. I mean, it's hard to find any type of technique like this where the research is just so overwhelmingly positive in one direction, right? All of these studies, I mean, I don't know if they're all, but the vast majority of the studies point in the same direction, that this has incredibly significant effects. And it only takes, as you can see, 2 minutes, 5 minutes at the most to do this. So not only is this something that we should do as individuals, but I think this is something that we need to embed in organizations, which is the reason why this is a topic here today. I think that we need to, in our teams, try to figure out how we can use this tool to manage teamwork and to really help each other basically achieve our goals and take our actions. So I'm just going to take a couple questions and then we're going to kind of end for today. Great question, Deborah. How do you handle it if you break your own rule? So first of all, realize that this is not foolproof. There's no way this tool or any other tool will guarantee you follow through on the action. And the worst thing you do, the literature is really clear, the worst thing you can do is this all or nothing thinking, which people fall victim to, which is, okay, well, I broke the rule. I guess it's all over. I'm a terrible person and this is never going to work again. No, you treat this as an experiment. You treat this as a scientist, right? You ran an experiment. It didn't work, right? You got feedback that this was not strong enough. So you run a new experiment, right? So you analyze it. You ask yourself, well, why did I fail, right? What happened that prevented me from actually following through? And let's say you got distracted. Well, then the next time around, create an if-then around the distraction. And what you might find is that the next time you do it perfectly fine. If there's another distraction, then do it again. Sometimes I've done this 10 times, different iterations, just like a scientist running 10 different experiments before I found one that actually worked really well for myself. But that was a great question, Deborah. So anyway, listen, I hope you found this useful. I'm going to start doing these webinars again every single week because I think they're valuable for people. At least that's what I've been told. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you have any ideas on what you might want to see in a future webinar, email me. The whole point I'm doing this, these webinars are totally free. The whole reason I'm doing this is to serve many of my readers and people who have served me so well in the past. So I'm happy to entertain suggestions. But again, thank you so much for attending today. I hope you use this technique, and I will see you next week.